Welcome again, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. So as I mentioned to some people on Facebook and in other social media platforms, I will start hosting guests on this channel. So I'll invite guests to talk about different topics. So that is something that I'm planning. So this video is about the comparison that I want to make between the marriage of the Minister of Cabinet Affairs, Dr. Elias Lomuro, and the rate of poverty in South Sudan. So it may sound unfair, but Elias Lomuro is not just your average South Sudanese. He's a public figure, and he's a significant voice in the South Sudanese political scene. So as you can see, and you maybe have read somewhere on the social media or in other mainstream news institutions in South Sudan, that the wedding was lavish. It was attended by high-profile figures in South Sudan, like the Vice President Taban Dengai, and also Vice President Josephine Lago. And there are other politicians and cabinet ministers who attended the wedding. So this is not just an average wedding. I want to compare this with statistics about the poverty rate in South Sudan from the World Bank. So some of you may have seen headlines like this. And they make us think about what is happening in South Sudan. So last year, as you can see, the World Bank released a report about poverty in South Sudan. So Poverty and Equity Assessment was released in June of 2024. Now, the statistics are startling, and they're really, really sad. So if you can see, as they mentioned, in 2021, the national rate of poverty was 78.4. Now, the extreme poverty rate was 71.5. Now, if you look at the gaps, they are really, really startling. And what is even extremely disheartening are these numbers. So if you look at those who are wealthy, so the 20 percentile, the top 20 wealthy population, they consume about 50% of whatever is sold or produced. So the consumption rate by the top 20% is 50%. Now, if you look at the bottom 20%, they consume only 4.8% of the consumption rate in South Sudan, total consumption. So that means the top 20% are consuming more than half, and the bottom 20% are consuming less than 5% of the total consumption. That is really startling. That's why you would see weddings that are lavish, where people are spending thousands of dollars and some people have nothing to eat. Now, if you look at the variables, look at the indications by states. So there are some states with the lowest poverty rates and others with the highest. So if you can see, Central Equatoria and Western Bahr el Ghazal have the lowest poverty rate, which is 70%. And 70% is not very low, still very high. So states with the highest are mostly Jiang states. The one with the lowest, so you look at Jonglei State, Lakes, Upper Nile, Warab, and Northern Bahr el Ghazal. So the state with the lowest poverty rate is Mogui in Eastern Equatoria. So the one with the highest is Northern Bahr el Ghazal. So the other one is 52.2. That's the rate of poverty in Mugwi County, Eastern Equatoria. That's 52%. Northern Bahr el Ghazal is 94.8. So that's a difference of 42 percentage points. That's a difference. It's really, these are really, really stark numbers. So when you see people having these lavish weddings, it makes you think about the people who have nothing to eat. Now that was in 2024. Like this year, they released another number. So in this case, they're not just writing about or showing us numbers of poverty statistics. They're also talking about the way forward. So as you can see from the title, a path to overcome the crisis. So the crisis of poverty and whatever crisis like wars and things like that. The numbers have not improved. So in 2022, the poverty rate was 76%. So it was actually 70%. Now, if you look at poverty rate in 2023, that was 84%. And then in 2024, it was 92%. So the 92% that I showed in one of the headlines was for last year. Now, what is even more disheartening, is what they're saying about what it would be this year. Remember, the 92% is for last year, 2024. Now, this year, they're saying the estimates are that it will go from 92% last year to 99.8%. Statistically, it's saying that South Sudan will be 100%. So those who have income, people who are having this lavish wedding, will be statistically negligible. So the whole country will be poor, 100%. That's what the statistics are saying. So it makes you think, are these people really serious? Do they care about what is happening? It looks like they're treating their people as if they are colonizers. And with imperial colonialism, what the British and the rest of the colonizing European powers did, they were all extractive. So they took the resources from Africa and invested in their own countries. But South Sudanese leaders are not investing in their own countries. They are still extractive. They're just about taking resources, not investing in the country. Now, if you look at these quotations from some figures, people who work with international agencies like the World Bank, and also our own Agustino Tingmaya, what they are saying about these numbers. So this is what Agustino, who is the Director General of National Bureau of Statistics, we all know Agustino Tingmaya. So he's saying the challenge facing policymakers in South Sudan is to design and implement sustainable, well-targeted policy interventions to address extreme poverty and food insecurity. Effective policy making relies on credible evidence, requiring increased investment in building a robust statistical system to support these interventions. So the numbers the World Bank is showing us, and the numbers our own National Bureau of Statistics can come up with can help policy making. But if you don't have this evidence, then it becomes really difficult to make policies that can help the people. So that's what Agustino is saying, and we can all agree with that. Without credible evidence, then you're not able to actually distribute resources according to the needs of the people. This is a quotation from Charles Underland. He's the World Bank Group country manager in South Sudan. And he's telling us about some of the reasons why we have such numbers when it comes to poverty in South Sudan. Weak governance, multiple shocks, lack of economic opportunity, high food prices, and conflicts have all contributed to increased poverty and vulnerability. South Sudan's challenges are many, but I also think that there are real opportunities to improve people's livelihoods. Key ways to achieve this goal include better management and utilization of the country's resources and fostering a stable, secure environment where citizens can farm, work, and invest in order to provide themselves with a better future. These are things that must be emphasized. Another one is from Frank Adoha, who was also a World Bank senior economist in South Sudan. Food insecurity is a widespread issue in South Sudan and has worsened recently with a spike in inflation. High food prices limit access to food, even in rural areas where over half of the households depend on market purchases to acquire food. Insecurity, population displacements, and low agricultural investments have reduced food production, contributing to higher rates of food insecurity. Investing in agriculture and road infrastructure would enhance market integration, connect rural areas with towns, and improve food delivery, thereby lowering staple food prices and reducing import dependence. These are some of the things experts are saying. And if they are accepted and operationalized by the leaders, then they may help mitigate. But we can see that South Sudan is now the poorest country in the world. And that makes us think about such weddings. And some of you may say, okay, this is unfair to Elias Lomuro, and many people are doing the same thing, having lavish weddings. But at some points you have to think about people to use as examples. He's always on our faces, he's always speaking, and some of the things he says, right recently, talking about some counties being belligerent to the state. I know he's not the one who drafted the document, that was a state position. But my point is, he's a national figure. So when he has lavish weddings like this, when South Sudanese have gone for months without getting paid, and you may realize that some activists are actually criticizing the wedding. When people are going for months, it's actually over a year. They're going to 2 years without pay. Civilians are killing themselves. And there's no food and there's no infrastructure. It makes you think about the state of mind of these leaders. Is this how things will continue? When we see such numbers, when the whole country is living in poverty. And some of you have seen this East African who's challenging South Sudanese, saying, your country is the poorest in Africa. But there are South Sudanese living in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, buying houses. But your people back home are poor, and saying, can you go back home and develop your country? It is sad, and we have to reflect on this, because we always complain about, oh, we don't want trusteeship, or we don't want regime change, we don't want foreign interventions. But the leaders were supposed to take care of the people are not doing anything. What happened? That's when I usually say there has to be a people-centered revolution, where the people in the villages can rise up and say, we can only respect you as a leader if you provide for us. But if you're not going to provide for us, then you're not welcome on this soil, even if you were born in this place. That's what must happen to these leaders. That's what should happen. That when they go to your villages, you must stop them. And if they can provide services, if they can go to Juba when they represent you in the parliament, they have to take your voice and tell them This is what my people are saying, and if you don't provide something, they will not welcome me back home. The people should take back their country.